All right, I'm Brandon Chineka, sitting here inside True Grind Systems, a performance facility located in Leander, Texas, Central Texas area. Sitting here with Ian, one of our strength coaches, Tori, our athletic trainer, and today we have Andreas Saltas, who is our in-house physical therapist. Not just any physical therapist. Andreas specializes in the brain, the nervous system, and he has been our gateway into this vast realm. Before I met Andreas, before he stepped into this gym, I knew about the CNS. I think we knew about the CNS, but we looked at it as very, very surface level. Like, I knew you could fatigue your nervous system, right? I knew you didn't want to take somebody first time and go run 10 miles with them because it would just destroy them. I knew max efforting, big compound movements is going to destroy your CNS, but we did not.
I think, yeah, it was just high-low model, and then whatever came from that as far as like the strength coach aspect of it. But I guess the deeper dive and how it plays a role in not only just recovery, mobility, just also performance, and how like different ways to go about it. And basically just it feels like voodoo sometimes. I think the first time we met you, you came in and walked us through a few courses, a few just simple drills, and it felt like you were doing magic, like someone was like playing a trick on us, and these small little things and how they all interconnected like spider webs. It made sense just from basic A&P and understanding that, but truly using it and truly applying it to the strength and performance aspect of us, and also just the recovery aspect, and seeing what you do now with athletes has just been insane to see in their way to get back to performing at the highest level they can.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were running into overhead athletes who had a lat, that it seemed like, would not let go. We couldn't beat that thing into submission. We could not get that athlete to go overhead without extending the spine, right? And we would stretch it, hang from it, like do everything we knew. And we finally, like, I was starting just to accept, hey, this is just a side effect or a consequence of being an overhead athlete. And then Andreas comes in and does something at the time what seemed completely irrelevant. And then all of a sudden, mobility unlocked, not just a little bit, but way more than I could ever imagine. So that all that being said, I'm going to let Andreas take over. Thank you for joining us today, man.
Thanks for
I
having me,
appreciate everything you've done for the gym, all the knowledge, the graciousness of you sharing, man. We really, really appreciate it. And
wherever I practice, I want to make sure that those around me tend to get a little bit of what exactly that I do. So this way there's a good sync between all of us, right? If I have an athlete and I know I rehab them a specific way, I need to make sure that I have trusted trainers or other movement professionals that can understand what I'm doing and not follow it to the T, but also making sure that it doesn't disrupt the progress that I've done with that specific athlete, making sure that that athlete is staying safe and constantly progressing. Because if we have differences in beliefs, then we're failing, right? And as long as it makes sense neurologically and biomechanically and you understand that, and you can see the differences once those principles are being applied. You have a much more better appreciation, and that gives you also the ability to learn more out of it.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You come at it from, you know, the therapy side. You're a
Yes.
physical therapist by trade. And so Ian and I have just been trying to learn through a fire hose right now and try to evolve it into the strength side, the strength and conditioning side. Like, how can we take this
Yeah.
this beautiful knowledge and put it into strength and conditioning? But that mean, what do you do? Like, explain in the most simplest way possible. Like, what do you do?
That's actually one of a very tough question, but in summary, I like to call myself kind of two things: either a brain-based coach or physical therapist. But even sometimes I kind of really don't know what I am because the way that our medical system is now composed of different specialties. I'm a specialist in respiratory training. I'm a specialist in biomechanics. I'm a specialist for this. There's no such thing as being a specialist at something because you're kind of tunnel visioning yourself to only that thing, and you don't have a much more broader appreciation of other systems. We are made out of systems. We have a respiratory system. We have lymphatic system. We have musculoskeletal system, visual system. All of those systems make you human, and they all communicate with each other. And because I know how to train the visual system, I know how to train the respiratory system, the vestibular system, which is your equilibrium, your balance. And I'm no specialist to any one of those. So I like to call myself more of a options facilitator. That comes more into my realm because it translates into I provide a lot more other options. If one option fails, there's something else that can possibly help. So that's why taking down a thorough history of an athlete is probably the most important piece when it comes to both rehab and performance. You have a kid that you're training and you know that he has shoulder pain. Okay, then a specialist will only focus on the shoulder itself, but this kid had past ankle sprains, past surgery, concussions, vision problems, breathing problems. All of those have to be addressed just for that shoulder thing. So that's why I like to teach this, not because I think I'm some sort of guru, is because I went through this myself for my own rehab and seeing that everything is interconnected. We all like to say everything's connected, but what does that mean? That means that all systems have to work in sync to give you the most optimal performance. And so that, yeah, I like to call myself either a brain-based movement coach as well as an options facilitator.
How did you, what was your path to that?
My path was actually quite scary. The reason why I became a physical therapist was I had a very horrific motorcycle accident back in 2005. It's a time when my parents, which they still do right now, they live in Greece, and my father, he bought me my dream motorcycle, and 2 days into vacationing after graduating high school, it was probably 3 o'clock in the morning, and I lost control of my motorcycle and fell off a 60-foot cliff. And again, this is 3 o'clock in the morning, not a sight of light or anybody to hear you, so I'm left down in a ditch 60 feet deep, and I had to find myself a way to climb back up for somebody to find me. And at that time, I didn't realize that the amount of injuries that I had, which everything for me was all internal. I didn't have anything external as far as injuries go. Everything was internal. And the major factor was that I had a severe spinal issue. Not so much of a spinal cord injury from what the doctors did not diagnose me at the time. I was actually misdiagnosed. They found that through MRIs that I had swelling in my lower back, my spine, that was found close to the spinal cord. And because through the MRIs, they were unable to detect if there was an actual true spinal cord injury. So a spinal cord injury means that there's a cut to your spinal cord. It could be a complete or an incomplete. But there was so much swelling wrapped around it that they couldn't determine whether there was a cut. So, but they still diagnosed me with a spinal cord injury. And that left me with an inability to have 70 to 80% loss of sensation down to my legs as well as movement. So I couldn't move my legs or my toes or anything. And, when you hear the doctor saying that you have this injury, don't expect, to be able to be fully functional, to stand and walk as much as you used to. So I was led to believe that I was just bound to be, assisted wheelchairs and crutches, and my entire family had to rely on helping me. Until the time that I was working with physical therapists, about 4 physical therapists in the hospital, and they would constantly, teach me how to use crutches, how to use a wheelchair. And I remember specifically that it was my left wrist that was ridiculously sore from all the weight that I was holding on to from the crutches. And I would constantly mobilize my wrist and stretch it. And the more I kept on moving my left wrist, the more I started getting little sensations down to my right toes. Now, for a paralyzed person, I don't want to say paralyzed, for someone that has loss of sensation and movement, to feel that is like winning the lottery. It was so much excitement of just feeling something. And back at the time, doctors they couldn't explain to me why that occurred. Why was my opposing wrist helping me feel something down to my opposite foot? The research came out about 8 to 9 years ago from today. Now we know the interconnections about the arm connecting with the opposite leg. And even though we didn't know what was going on, the therapist kept on saying, let's keep on training your upper body. Let's keep on doing shoulder work, elbow work, wrist work, whatever it is. And the more I trained, quite funny enough, the more I did shoulder work, the more I started feeling my hips. Anytime I did biceps, triceps that involved the elbow joint, I started feeling my knees. The more I did more wrist work, I started feeling my toes and my ankles. Nobody knew why that occurred, but we kept on going. As that was progressing, the strength part of my upper body was one portion, but there was other things in the mix. The moment I started being able to stand up, I had balance issues. My breathing was just through the roof. My vision started becoming a little bit more blurry or more tunnel vision. I had to address all those things in conjunction in order for me to have a full recovery. So I admitted myself into PT school. I remember admitting myself into PT school in crutches. And I remember 4 years later, after graduating, I'm just running, climbing trees, hiking, almost like nothing ever happened. So because of my desire to fix myself, to be able to stand and walk and run and do the things I love, I said, this is my calling. I need to do this as my profession, as my true passion. And ever since then, I've looked at rehab and sports performance completely different of how it's taught today. Not only as just a biomechanical thing, but a neurobiomechanical. It's just, if we focus too much on biomechanics, muscles and tendons and ligaments, that's only one chapter. If you neglect all the others, though, you won't go so far. And that's why a lot of therapists and even trainers have a hard time progressing their athletes, because they're not considering other factors, other systems that have to work to conjunction. So that's how I became a therapist. And I've been practicing now for almost 16 to 17 years, and I don't think there's any other profession out there that I would ever do. This is by far the best profession ever.
What did you want to do before everything?
Believe it or not, I want to become a pilot.
Okay.
Yeah, completely different. I just wanted to be in the air. But
Fair
no,
enough.
I changed it the
Yeah.
moment I had that accident. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, you definitely changed the way we viewed performance as well. I mean, essentially, you're a big piece on us splitting the 3 pillars up, right? Because we had to create a pillar for everything you've taught us,
Yes.
right? Which is the brain, the control pillar. So the nervous system, right? So go into what is the nervous system's role within performance?
In my book, I think it's everything. Now we're talking about nervous system is which one? We have a central nervous system. We have a peripheral nervous system. We want to target more of the CNS, central nervous system, which is composed of your brain and your spinal cord. More specifically, though, would be the brain. This little 3-pound organ is everything. It's your entire universe. He's the commander of everything that you do, everything that happens to you, and everything that you will become. If we learn the basic, even just the very basic functions of the brain, we can literally unlock a lot of different potential for our athletes and for, in my case, my patients. So looking at this a little bit more higher in the hierarchy, I'd say by far is brain, and everything else is just little followers to me. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What does the brain do? Like, what's the brain's objective?
Your brain does literally 2 things. Number 1, survival, and the second is movement. The most vital will be survival. Is your brain more oriented now towards survival, or is it more oriented towards performance? Your brain's job as far as survival goes, it does that through pattern recognition, which means, in other terms, prediction. Your brain predicts before it moves. If I see a glass of water right here, my vision, the input for my vision has to tell my brain, okay, that's a glass of water. Does it look hot? Do I see fumes coming out of it? Or does it look cold? Are there spikes coming out of the glass, or is it nice and solid? That determines how I'm going to move it. Should I grab it, or should I be careful from it? That happens with every single thing that we do. We predict things first, and then we act, right? We know that when we're driving, we know when the exit is coming up. What do I have to do to prepare for that? I got to look if other upcoming cars are coming right behind me, signal, everything. So that is everything that our brain does has to do it through pattern recognition, or in other terms, prediction. If you're predicting that something is going to happen in a negative way, your movement will adjust to that. You will move slower. You will move more carefully. You're going to go into that startle reflex, which is a more hunched position. Tunnel vision instead of nice peripheral vision, which is probably one of the most important skills that a lot of athletes are missing nowadays is peripheral vision. So your body adjusts to what it's about to happen to you. So our job as movement professionals is to create better prediction, better predicting habits in order for them to move around the world with safety.
How you speak about peripheral vision? Like, how would we get that? How would athletes get that?
It's easy to do, but hard to keep on doing.
Okay.
Unfortunately, now we live in a time where our tunnel vision is getting a lot more increased by the use of phones and screens. And not only that, even in athletics, even if we take football players, right, they wear their helmets and they lose peripheral vision.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to tell now football players to not use helmets, obviously, but the more we train ourselves habitually to constantly keep focal vision, Focal vision is one of the leading causes for forward head posture, right? It's also the more I have focal vision, the more you're locked into that fight or flight mode. That's what happens when you're in fight or flight mode. Your vision becomes tunnel vision. You can't think or see whatever is going on around you. And even with the idea of peripheral vision is one thing. There's peripheral vision, but there's also peripheral awareness. Are you aware of what's going on your right side, on your left side, top and bottom? So it's easy to use as a training tool to train peripheral vision by telling, your athletes, hey, just look far away and tell me, what do you see around you, and can you maintain that? Latest research suggests now, because of our increase in technology with phones and monitors, we need a minimum of an hour a day of peripheral vision training. Go and walk out and see if, instead of looking down, because that's another habit that a lot of humans do now, is they constantly look down to see where they're going. They never look up and open their field of vision because, one, it's actually hard to maintain. It requires focus to be like, all right, am I seeing the cars on my right side and trees on my left and planes on the top of me and the floor underneath me? So you have to constantly push the person to do peripheral awareness and peripheral vision training in order for it to become habitual. So it's an easy skill. It's just hard to do on a daily practice. So that's why I say schedule every single day, 5 minutes. If you can, just go for a walk and just open your eyes a little bit. Because last thing that I'll mention, the more focal vision you have, tunnel vision, the more you're locked into that sympathetic state, which is that that fight or flight mode. The moment you start opening up your vision, you now have parasympathetics, rest and digest. Your posture immediately increases. Everybody likes to improve posture. The number one thing you should do is peripheral vision, not train your back muscles, train your neck muscles to keep you upright. You could do all that stuff every day, all day, but if your vision sucks, everything else sucks. Hopefully that.
Yeah. So that's great. What I'm thinking about is kind of just a specific situation. Let's say an athlete is in the batter's box and they start to feel off. They start to feel the anxiety. They start to feel the fight or flight kick in. They don't really understand it, but they start to feel that. So would this be accurate? Would this be beneficial to them to, call timeout, step out, and just look at the outfield fence?
Absolutely.
And just take a deep breath and
Breathing.
regain your peripherals, try
Absolutely.
to relax, calm
Absolutely.
down, and then get back in the box.
Absolutely. There's tons and tons of little strategies that you can do within 2 minutes to get yourself into that resting state. Yeah. Take 2 minutes, 5 minutes away, open up your vision, control your breathing, bounce a little bit because bouncing is actually very relaxing.
Okay.
Move a little bit, but move in fluidity,
Right.
not tensed. Shake it off, kind of a
Right.
thing, right? Doesn't take a lot. So yeah, these are little tricks that you can do in between training sessions or practices to take 5 minutes, regain your ability to stay calm, right? Because this athlete has been using their nervous system at high gear, but then your brain is like, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you need? You need fuel. And you need two things. What does fuel mean? Oxygen and glucose. Breathe a little bit and have a piece of candy, a little sip of Gatorade, get some glucose back in, because if you're tired and fatigued, you can't perform well. That is the critical point of the possibility of getting injured.
So I'm assuming you said two roles, right? Survival and movement.
Yes,
I'm assuming survival is going to take precedent
by far.
over that,
Yeah.
right? So what happens to the body when that brain is locked in survival mode?
Absolutely. So You have your two categories: survival mode, or performance mode.
Right.
If you're locked in survival mode, you have inflexibility, stiffness, pain, poor breathing, loss of balance, anxiety, vertigo, poor endocrine response, all of the negative things that you can possibly think of. That's what happens when you're in survival mode. Reverse that, you have very good balance, very good vision, very good breathing, good movement, no pain. So now that's why when I work with my athletes, I have to determine, are they more in survival mode or are they more in performance mode? So I have to divide my athlete. Do they need more rehab and not performance yet? Because if they're operating still within rehab, meaning even if they have a little bit of pain, I have to ensure that that pain does not influence their performance. If you have pain, you're still kind of locked into that survival mode. Your movement will be around that injury, around that pain, but it's not going to be the best. You're going to have a kid that used to throw 90, 92. All of a sudden, because of this one little ache, now he's throwing 85. And that can cost him a home run,
Right.
whatever it may be.
Go ahead.
So a lot of athletes, especially, playing collegiately in high school, they kind of mask these injuries, or they mask kind of how they're feeling. Is there like 3 things that an athlete can do some self-reflection upon to kind of be truly honest with them, other than slamming caffeine and taking some ibuprofen? Like, you tell an athlete, hey, like, you've been struggling, or when you wake up the day of a game, it's like there's 3 little self-reflection points that you would tell your athletes or the athletes you work with to kind of make sure that we're not kind of masking this fight or flight mode, and that really being honest with ourselves and taking a deep breath. I know you talked about some drills, but what about more of a mental side of, like, hey, how's my breathing, or how did I sleep, or is it kind of keep focus, or is it being mindful? Was there like 3 little tips you could give to like a college athlete or a high school athlete to kind of do like a self-evaluation on a day-to-day basis for them?
Well, they have to, actually what Brandon said a little while ago about journaling. It's always good to record stuff down to see what have you done throughout the entire day and notice how you feel the next day. If you record that, hey, I spent X amount of hours on scrolling on Instagram, X amount of hours watching TV, I ate this, I trained this way, I stretched. It's good to record stuff that you do, not on a daily basis, but notice that the things that you're doing that contributes to either you're performing well or not. So if they find themselves that, hey, I felt so much better when I got an additional hour of sleep, maybe you should sleep a little bit more. I noticed that once I started controlling my breathing and I wasn't hyperventilating, I started feeling a lot less pain. So to answer not just your question, but to anyone's question, is my answer will always be, it depends. So I think reflecting back on the things that you've done a day or 2 or a week before to see how has that served you. And if I change one little thing, because if we try and change everything, it's too painful. Change one little thing that can literally make your performance go to another higher level. By far, I would say that notice how your breathing is, because the moment you have anxiety or stress, or you're locked into that fight or flight mode, first thing that happens is you're hyperventilating, right? And because you're breathing 24/7, it requires practice over and over and over again on a daily basis in order to change the way you breathe. Once you fix that, you might start to notice that everything else starts to fall in line, meaning, hey, I can see better, I balance better. Now, breathing is only one portion. So I would say is learn to, actually one other important thing is we talk about muscle relaxation, right? Muscle relaxation is a skill. It's not just something that happens on its own. So when we tell people, hey, relax, relax, and you see them, I am relaxed. No, you're not. Focus on a muscle group, and just think about it, visualize that it's relaxing, and then all of a sudden, hey, feels more loose. So I would say tips would be control your breathing, see if you can focus 2 to 5 minutes on just active muscle relaxation. Let go of the tension, right? Because it's a skill that needs to be trained. So breathing, muscle relaxation will be another, and gentle joint mobility will be some of the easiest things that you can do. Yeah, I would say those 3 things. Yeah.
Thank you.
So from what I understand with the survival versus performance brain, the way I'm been describing it to athletes and parents is, if there's a line on the ground and I ask you to walk it, very, very simple, very easy. You could probably hold a conversation looking at me and still walk the line very, very well. Now, if that line is on the edge of a 500-foot cliff,
Yeah.
what's going to happen, right? So the body's going to lock you up and slow you down, which is the exact opposite of what we want in sports. Is that a fair or a good analogy to use when the brain's in survival mode, which would be walking a line on the edge of a cliff, versus performance mode of a safe, flat ground line?
Yeah, it's a great analogy, and that specific example is your vision determines that now.
Right. And that's the other crazy thing is, like, there's so many inputs to survival. It could be a vision base, it could be a balance base, it could be a movement base. If a movement feels unsafe,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
An emotional thing, like an anxiety, a previous injury, like all of these things play into your brain's perception of what's safe and what's not safe.
Absolutely. I mean, the holy grail of, well, not even the holy grail, but the way how things work is just putting it in very basic terms. You have input, interpretation, output. Input, I see things, that's an input. I feel things, that's an input, whether that's external or internal, anxiety and stress. Hearing, sound is an input. So we have what we call our exteroception, right? Smell, taste, touch, seeing, all of that. All of that information, all of that input goes into one area, your brain. Your brain now is the decision maker of what to make out of that input. Then that brain will give you an output. Pain is an output. It's not an input. It's a response. Inflexibility is an output. Stress is an output. So the more we as movement coaches, we have to correct better inputs so the brain can have and produce better outputs, right? So that's how survival works. So your brain will be locked in survival mode because of the bad input that it's getting. And it's not just, large, too loud noises, or I'm seeing a lot of different threatening things, right? Your brain is, we spoke about survival, we spoke about performance. Your brain wants to filter out threats. Picture your brain being like a bucket. I'm going to spill in there past injuries. I'm going to spill in there family problems. My wife just left me. Poor eating habits, bad breathing, past surgeries. All of those things eventually will fill up the bucket, and then eventually will spill out pain, decreased performance, inflexibility, poor vision. So those are all responses. Our job is to take one threat out of the bucket as much as possible. I have stress and anxiety for home. All right, let's talk about that. Let's see if we can modify a few things in your life to kind of minimize that. I have had past injuries or past surgeries. That really matters to your current situation. We cannot neglect past injuries. I don't care if you're 4 years old that you had an ankle sprain, that carries with you in life. So fix the brain bucket by addressing all these little threats from all these inputs. Now you have a much more optimal athlete in my book.
So being aware, right? That self-awareness that we've spoke about before, and understanding, being able to be in your body and being able to feel a threat, whether that's increased heart rate, anxiety, sweating, whatever. Is that a really good first line of defense for starting to make real changes and starting to adjust your brain, orientate your brain back towards performance and out of survival?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As long as you are true to yourself and honest with yourself of what has happened in my life, what is currently happening. Just to give you an example, one of the top, probably the number one reason for lower back pain is job dissatisfaction. You have a lot of people that are very unsatisfied with their jobs, and automatically they say, I have back pain that can just not let me rest at all. And all of a sudden they do a career change and they're like, I feel amazing, right? So being aware, just like you said, recording all this stuff down to know what appropriate changes you need to make is the make or break of you being out of survival mode and back into performance mode. So yes.
Cool. That is a good analogy and a good sight of how the three pillars always are working together. And that's like the crazy beautiful thing about this is, we're specifically talking about the control pillar with the brain and the CNS and its role in performance and what it does. But then you just bring in the belief pillar and talk about like that emotion definitely plays a role in what your brain does, the decisions it makes,
Yes.
and then which obviously affect the body
Yep.
and how you perform.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that is awesome stuff, man. That is,
And just like how you have your three pillars, I have my own.
yeah.
See well, balance well, move well. If I had to put a hierarchy on movement and performance, vision by far is number one because it's the closest to the brain. It's literally projections of your brain. Then you have your balance system, which is called your vestibular system, also closest to the brain. And then it's movement, proprioception, mobility. That's the last thing, with respect, that's the last thing I'll care about. If they can't see well and they can't balance well, I could do all the kind of movement stuff you can possibly think of. They won't get to that 100% that I want that athlete to be in. So there are specific principles that have to be addressed. And that's why us as movement professionals, we should not follow protocols. There's no such thing as protocols. There's principles. Focus on that. You have a much more higher chance of having your athlete move out of survival mode and back into performance mode.
I love it, man. That's we're definitely going to dive way deeper into all of those things that you
I can't
said:
wait.
vision, smell, hearing, taste, motor control, movement, pain, like all of that stuff. It's so fascinating, and I love wrapping it around the performance, the performance model.
Yeah.
Because I think ultimately that's what, whether you're an athlete or an adult with a 9-to-5, we want to perform better. We want to
Absolutely.
feel better.
Yeah, when we speak about performance, we're not talking about athletic performance. We're talking about getting up from a chair is a performance skill.
Holding your newborn, like
Absolutely.
all of that stuff, man. It's so fascinating. But
Absolutely.
that'll be for another podcast. As far as this one, thanks for listening to the True Guy podcast. If you liked it, be sure to share it, subscribe, and if you want more content about building better athletes, be sure to follow us on social media.
Awesome.